there's a time to like speak and there's a time to listen. And I feel like what's frustrating is that like everyone is claiming the pro black I'm pro black but not doing anything productive. Where is the pro? If you're not
Well,
gonna
that brings us back to the J. Cole and No Name thing, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
That brings us back to Kanye West, who claims that he is pro-black, right?
Mhm. Mhm. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Safe Space Podcast. I'm your host, Sydney Rosant, and I'm back with my third time recurring guest. We're currently recording part two of this little mini series where we kind of do a deep dive into the gender wars. And so part one, if you're coming from that, was, or if you haven't seen it, actually go watch it, where we discuss like the history behind the gender war, specifically where it involves black people, because that's what we're concerned about. The rest of y'all.
Hey, Sydney, let me uplift this, right? Let's just call them the Black Gender Wars, dog.
Okay,
Like
it's the
that's what
black
they are.
gender wars.
It's the Black Gender Wars, and this is like part two in the series. But
Mm,
we also have a part three that we should promo now because we're gonna
yes.
have King Pierre and Sunny Day Jones come on.
Yes, it's going to be a big one. It's going to be a big one. And I'm excited to hear their perspective as well. But so now that we've reached the modern day gender wars, and we kind of talked about it a little bit on the previous episode, what have your experience, or what is your experience kind of consisted of when you're posting on TikTok and you're trying to have these types of conversations with black men and women who maybe just aren't getting it?
That's a good question, and I'm gonna answer it. But Sydney, if I may,
Mm,
on the last episode, you said something that was it really struck me. So
mm,
you described making a post where you said you didn't necessarily want your partner to be your protector and provider, right? That you could
mm,
provide for yourself, that you were sort of taking the pressure off of
yes.
your partner for having to do those
Yes.
things.
Hmm.
And what was the response to that?
I mean, it was pretty much people saying that like I was wrong about marriage dynamics, and that I was gonna end up single and alone and a cat lady, just all the, you know how they be, just like throwing tomatoes at me pretty much. But like like I really, the thing is, when I posted it, I was like thinking like, man, they're gonna love me. Like, look at me, just like, because what kills me is like sometimes it's like the same people who do the 50-50 conversations are the same ones who like, get upset at you. So I'm like, okay, like this is exactly what they want, but I guess not.
Um,
And then also
so they
like,
have a go on. You
okay,
got the floor, baby.
all right, but it's also like, I don't, I think that because I was the one who said it, and I was also like, I don't need you to wait, especially when you say that, like those three words, like I don't need. I think that's like a trigger. That's a trigger for them, where it's like, don't worry, I will be competent enough to make sure that I'm straight, and all you need to do is take care of your side of things, and then we come together. And I think when they hear the I don't need, it just really gets at them, when at the end of the day it's like, you couldn't even provide for me if you wanted to, because yesterday you were talking about how you have to go 50-50. So it's like, which one is it? Like, if we're being real, I'm just saying what it is. It's like, I already know what you can't do, so I'm not gonna put this expectation on you. But now I say that, like, I'll do what I have to do and you do what you have to do, and now I'm the villain.
Yeah, um, that's a great observation. And so that's actually something that I want to hit on right now.
Mm,
Um, Part of the reason that these particular Black men who are invested in being the protector and the provider,
mm,
even though often they do not have the economic resources, right,
mm,
to be that person, is because of patriarchy, right?
mm,
Patriarchy does not only hurt women. And if you talk to these men, these patriarchal black men,
Mm-hmm.
the moment you say patriarchy, their ears close, their minds shut off. They say, feminism is a trick by white women foisted upon black women for the
Mm-hmm.
fall of the black man. They're going to center the experience of the black man in everything. But you know what they're
Mm-hmm.
not going to have?
When they center the experiences of the black man,
Yeah, what are they not going to have?
I mean, they're gonna end up losing black women in the end.
What they're not going to have is facts, data, and
Oh
figures
yeah,
about
of
the
course, of
experience
course,
of
of
black men.
course. Mm-hmm.
Um, we know that demographically, the folks who are ending up alone right now
Mm-hmm.
are black men. Well, not even just black men, are men generally, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you are a patriarchal man in America in
Mm-hmm.
2022, you are more likely to die alone
Mm-hmm.
than any um, feminist or womanist like black woman.
Mm-hmm.
That's just facts. And y'all say all this stuff and y'all project all this stuff onto black women. Um, but it's like, whenever you point, you got four fingers pointing back at you type deal.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get into the socioeconomic factors that are fueling um, the red pilling of black patriarchal black men and the pick me's. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
you said that they want to that these black men want to protect and provide, but then also say we should go 50-50 on stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So there's already a disconnect and a dissonance there.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to say I want to be the primary, the breadwinner? I want to be protector and provider, but I also want you to go 50-50 with me on like the financial aspect of things.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the real tea. Here are the facts and figures.
Yeah.
The median income in the United States of America, and we can talk about average, we can talk about modal, but median is the number that the majority of people typically bring home.
Yeah.
That's sort of what median means.
Mm-hmm.
Is $33,000. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
$33,000 correlates to about $15 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at worker productivity in the United States, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the minimum wage, if the American minimum wage kept up with worker productivity, the
Mm-hmm.
minimum wage would be around $25 to $26 right now.
Yeah.
No, but most people in America are not making that,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have talked about relationship dynamics during the enslavement, during emancipation and Reconstruction,
Mm-hmm.
during Jim Crow, World War II, the Civil Rights Movement. We've talked about Black gender dynamics when it came to integration, and now
Mm-hmm.
we're arriving at today. The fact of the matter is that Black women are the most educated demographic in the United States of America. Argue with your mama because somebody said I'm quoting an incorrect stat. I told them I have never quoted an incorrect stat in my life.
Mm-hmm.
The most educated demographic in the United States of America is Black women. Why? Because Black women are reading, because Black women are going to go get that master's. They're going to go get that certification, right? They're going to do the things they need to participate in this American capitalistic system.
I need to interject here because
Yeah.
not to disagree, obviously. But
Okay.
I saw in the video that I did a reaction to recently, it was the one I referenced in the last episode where they were talking about black men being the most disrespected. In the video, one of the guys was like, and the reason why black women are more respected than black men is because, they're the most educated. So how can you be disrespected if you're educated, right? Because knowledge is power. What you like he took all these different things, like whatever. And so my thing is like, well, what's stopping you from getting educated? Because it's not like black women are going to different schools. Y'all are in the same classrooms together.
Come
I
on.
mean,
Speak on it.
the issue is, and I don't like to just, punch at black men, but like it's the attraction to easy money, wanting to be rappers, scammers, this and that. I've had so many conversations with Black men growing up and even now where they were like, like this college degree you're getting, it's useless. Da, 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 da. When I took AP classes, they're like, well, we get the same diploma, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, in the end, I did all the work now so that I could have more later on. You could have been doing it too, but you were talking about how, like, the entertainment industry, that's where it's at. That's where it's at, being doing this and doing that. I mean, we have the same, like, it's hard for me, and in this realm, it's hard for me to be sympathetic because it's like we're going through the same thing. We're going to
Come
the
on,
same schools. We're
come on,
receiving the same opportunities.
come on. Speak on it.
You cannot be upset at Black women for making the most of it. And this is the thing, because I think they refuse to see us as leaders in any realm, that like when they see us do something, they must do the opposite. They have to.
This is what I'll say, right? I have
Mm-hmm.
said that patriarchal Black men and women, patriarchal Black men and the pygmies, they're weak because they don't read.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Patriarchy is not a meritocracy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And even in the text where meritocracy sort of became a buzzword and in the cultural zeitgeist back in the early 19th century, um, or the early 20th century being the 1900s,
Mm-hmm.
um, there is no such thing in the United States as a meritocracy, right?
Mm-hmm.
White people in the US do not get ahead of other demographics because they are smarter or harder working,
Mm-hmm.
which those aspects about being smarter or harder working tie directly into capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
Capitalism is not a meritocracy.
Mm-hmm.
Patriarchy is not a meritocracy.
Mm-hmm.
White supremacy is not a meritocracy. And
Mm-hmm.
so, if capitalism and patriarchy are offsprings of white supremacy,
Mm-hmm.
then when you are saying things like what these men sort of like say to you, or when they have these educational opportunities and they choose not to engage, there's some structural stuff to unpack there
Mm-hmm.
that we might have to do in another episode. Um, but what I was saying about Black women being the most educated demographic,
Mm-hmm.
particularly amongst millennial and Gen Z,
Mm-hmm.
Black men and women, right,
Mm-hmm.
is that Black women are beginning to make more money than
Mm-hmm.
Black men.
Yup. Yup.
Black women, because of their educational attainment,
Mm-hmm.
because they invested in themselves from a young age, had
Mm-hmm.
other people invest in them, pour into them. Uncle Luke, the rapper Uncle Luke, tweeted a few weeks ago that it is
Mm-hmm.
easier to find a gun in the hood than a book or a library. That is
Mm-hmm.
nonsense. That is utter rubbish, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, Black women become the most educated demographic in the United States of America.
Mm-hmm.
Black women start to be more represented in corporate roles and
Mm-hmm.
professional roles and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. Um, Black women, even a lot of the single mothers, are at a point where they simply have more material resources
Mm-hmm.
than Black men.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you say things like, like I can provide for myself, what I
Mm-hmm.
need you to do is like give me the emotional support and intimacy that I'm
Mm-hmm.
asking for.
Mm-hmm.
If you are living your life being guided by patriarchy and capitalism, as
Mm-hmm.
so many Black men are,
Mm-hmm.
whether it is Kanye West, um, or people, his adherents,
Mm-hmm.
the pressure to be the sole provider in today's society where the government and the corporations, right,
Mm-hmm.
have created an atmosphere, a dynamic where most people in the United States of America today
Mm-hmm.
are not making the type of money, they do not have the material resources that they need to have a good quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
That dynamic is disproportionately affecting Black men right now.
Mm-hmm.
And because they are unwilling to reckon with the fact that these capitalistic systems and patriarchal systems are not for them, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They try to they're trying to identify where to place the blame.
Mm-hmm.
And they end up putting the blame on their partners, on feminism, on different aspects of society that has so little to do with like individual relationship dynamics,
Mm-hmm.
that that is what is leading them. This anger, this
Mm-hmm.
frustration, this inability to live up to patriarchal ideals
Mm-hmm.
is what leads them to lash out.
Mm-hmm. And another aspect of society that they blame is actually white supremacy, but they say or they claim that uh, Black women are receiving help from white supremacy and that they're being given these opportunities because they're women. And I had this discussion so many times in comment sections because the thing is like once you like ask a question and they don't have an answer, usually they just, run away. And I'm like, can you tell me something that the government has done specifically to help and advance Black women, exclusively just Black women?
The
Name
two
one
things,
thing.
the two things that they will reference will be social programs. They'll reference welfare and they will reference um, child support. That's the two things they'll
Korey,
reference.
Korey, I'm sorry. These people are so lost in the sauce that they don't reference anything at all.
Oh man,
They
the
don't
two things
respond.
that
It's literally silence. Like the two, like those are the gimmies, right? They don't even know the gimmies anymore. They don't even know those. They don't even know their talking points. Like, but it's just like, oh, Black women are being given help. Like they're given these opportunities.
by
Since
whom
when? Since
exactly?
when? White people are gonna help Black women? Every time I see it, I'm just like, and the thing is like I think what frustrates me more than anything is that everybody wants to talk, but nobody wants to have a conversation. Like everybody wants to say what they say from a place of like authority, but nobody wants to listen because there's a time to like speak and there's a time to listen. And I feel like what's frustrating is that like everyone is claiming the pro black I'm pro black but not doing anything productive. Where is the pro if you're not
Well,
gonna
that brings us back to the J. Cole and No Name thing, right?
mhm mhm
That brings us back to Kanye West, who claims that he is pro-black, right?
mhm mhm
If you are not pro-black men, women, queer folk, non-binary,
mhm
if
mhm
you are children, I
mhm
can't forget children. If you are not for the well-being of everybody who is black,
mhm
you are not pro-black.
period.
And beyond that, when we're talking about the socioeconomic conditions that breed this gendered resentment in America, and specifically in the Black gender wars,
Mhm
when you create lateral harm by infighting, right? Intracommunity
mhm
fighting with Black women and Black men, or
mhm
Black people and Jewish people, or, Black people and Asian people, right?
mhm
Three
mhm
different things that I can reference over the past few years. The continued false sort of like comments that are made that Black people are driving anti Asian hate, that is
mhm
easily debunked.
mhm
The primary driver of anti Asian hate is white people. if you are saying, that we're the real Jews and these white people are fake Jews and all this stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
engaging that sort of anti-Semitism, again, that stuff is easily debunked. If you're
Mm-hmm.
saying that Black women are receiving assistance that isn't available to Black men, that is easily debunked, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so when you start doing these lateral moves, creating this lateral harm, either punching to the side or punching down instead of punching
Mm-hmm.
upward, you're doing white supremacy's work for it.
Yep. Yep.
Because white supremacy wants to harm everyone who is not first white, and then secondly, everyone who is not a white man.
Yep. Yep.
And so if you engage with the offspring of white supremacy,
Mm-hmm.
misogyny and misogynoir,
Mm-hmm.
anti-Semitism,
Mm-hmm.
xenophobia,
Mm-hmm.
racism, anti-Asian hate,
Mm-hmm.
as someone who's a part of a marginalized group, you become an agent of white supremacy and you're doing white supremacy's job. Because if
Exactly.
we're willing to fight amongst ourselves or with other racial categories, and I'm not just saying this to Black people, I'm saying this to all marginalized people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are some painful areas in different interactions with people with marginalized communities, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
people love to bring up the fact that a few of the nations of Native Americans did own slaves.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fraction of a fraction. Who owned most of
Yeah.
the slaves?
White
White people.
people. Yeah.
Or when you say that a few white Jewish people in South
Mm-hmm.
Carolina, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's where a lot of Jewish people lived in the U.S. At the time. Again, fraction of a fraction of these white Jewish families
Mm-hmm.
owned some slaves.
Mm-hmm.
Who owned the most slaves?
White Americans.
White Americans. When you say that these white Jews run the global economy and the media, right? In
Mm-hmm.
America, Jewish people make up about 6% of the United States of America today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you say, the Jewish people, they're the executive, they run all this stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, who owns the TV conglomerates? Who owns the banks?
Mm-hmm.
It,
It's white
it is
Americans.
white Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And so when any person of a marginalized community starts
Mm-hmm.
to aim like the scope sideways or in front of them instead of up,
Mm-hmm.
you're doing white supremacy's work for it, and you
Exactly.
can be rewarded for it. Clarence Thomas, Candace Owens, that Asian chick that was friends with Candace Owens and said that abortion is worse than slavery.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
You can get your rewards from white supremacy by doing that.
But the
There
thing
is a
is
reward
that
to be had.
like they always do. They always get the reward when they do it because like it's so inflammatory. It's so like infuriating that it just draws and it draws so many people in and people like I mean they respond not necessarily positively to it, but not always positively, but there's a lot of people who like agree with those perspectives. And so like every it frustrates me because it's like in a way, it's like, why can't the people who know what they're talking about, why can't they be the ones that get all the attention? Why is it always these people? But at the same time, like it's, you know
It
how
is how
everyone's
white
like,
supremacy sustains itself.
right. But you know the conversation about how everyone's like, hey, put the mics down, put the mics down. I'm at the point where I'm like, honestly, it's time for everybody to start buying a mic. It's time for us to just start drowning out the voices as much as we can because it's like they're not going to put it down. They're making hundreds, if not thousands, and potentially millions of dollars by creating these platforms of hatred. So it's like, I mean, the only thing to do is for regular people to, you know what? Let me start a little podcast of my own.
Well, let's look at some of the most successful digital snake oil salesmen today.
Mm-hmm.
President Trump made billions of dollars spreading lies and using his position to enrich himself.
Mm-hmm.
Alex Jones made hundreds of millions of dollars. He may owe, $1 billion now, but he
Mm-hmm.
made hundreds of millions of dollars by lying.
Mm-hmm.
Elon Musk, hundreds of millions of dollars by lying, cheating, and scamming. Candace Owens,
Mm-hmm.
millions of dollars. Tommy Loren,
Mm-hmm.
millions of dollars, right? Andrew Tate, Kevin Samuels, they made money by spreading misinformation that upheld white supremacy,
Mm-hmm.
and they got their reward. Their reward was through capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about, and I am using this lovingly and very jokingly, right? When people talk about, Pookie and Ray Ray need to put the mic down,
Mm-hmm.
um, y'all do.
Mm.
Put the
I mean,
mic down and pick up a book.
it's the truth, but the thing is like they're getting rewarded. When
Hmm.
Pookie and Ray Ray have 100,000 followers on TikTok, they will never put the mic down. And in fact, they just keep on upgrading studio, big studios, huge cameras. It's like a CNN setup in there.
Yeah.
I'm like, my oh my, how could these people, like, now
But
they're being
again, black
empowered?
black men specifically should not be the face of like the podcast epidemic, right? Because you
No,
got
they
Alex
shouldn't.
Jones, you got Joe Rogan,
Mm,
uh, Drink Champs, Barstool Sports.
mm,
Um, but if you listen into these liars and fools who are
mm,
easily debunked, and anytime an article comes out, right, whether you support Elon Musk, whether you support Kanye West,
mm,
uh, whether you support Nicki Minaj, right, because she
mm,
put out
mm.
vaccination misinformation, right?
That was crazy.
Anytime somebody debunks them, their adherents, their fans will say, "You're a liar" or "You're a
Mm-hmm.
hater,"
Mm-hmm.
and
Oh, I
that's how
know.
they.
Trust me, Korey. I know all about Nicki Minaj. Hey, they be in my DMs, acting a
The
fool,
Barb's.
crazy. I don't even want to go there with them, but they're
Yeah, I
crazy.
don't. I don't engage with fandoms or stands of anyone,
Mm-hmm.
because to oftentimes to be within a fandom,
Mm-hmm.
or to be a stand specifically, you have to have an uncritical eye.
Very uncritical, incredibly uncritical. I mean, oh Lord, and they worship her. I mean, they
Now,
literally
my
worship
question
her.
is, what is the material benefit that you get from being a Nicki Minaj stan or a Barb? Like, is she paying any of your bills?
Maybe she is. Maybe it's something we don't know that's going on because the way,
Are
the
you getting
way,
brand deals for it?
the way she goes to, they go to war for her.
Hmm.
Wow. And I mean, she also like, she triggers them too. Like she gets them. She
Yeah,
knows how
she'll
to
rile
get
them
her
up. She'll
people
weaponize her
where.
platform, right, against other people.
She doesn't mind doing that at all. But like, I don't know. Like I think they have I think she has like a newsletter for some of them. I know that, which I know Nikki is she sent out all y'all's information, please.
So this is what I'm saying, and this is another part of like the dissonance, in a lot of ways. Uh, if you are from a marginalized group and you
Mhm.
engage in any of the isms, the offspring of white supremacy, then typically your reward is going to be through capitalism, right? So
Yeah.
you will no longer sort of be materially insecure.
Mhm.
Um, and again, once you get wealth in the United States, oftentimes it's a sort of self perpetuating dynamic that those who achieve great wealth in the US are often viewed as some sort of like moral absolute, that
Mhm.
because you are wealthy, you are inherently either hardworking or a good person. And again, that's capitalistic hogwash. Kanye West is not a good person. Elon Musk is
Mhm.
not a good person. Candace Owens is not a good person. Nicki Minaj is not a good person.
I also kind of I agree with you, but I've also started to see something else where now they're admitting that those people aren't good people, but that they are allowed to not be good people. So it's like, well, when you're part of the 1%, the rules don't apply to you. So it's like now they're acknowledging that like what they're doing like isn't good, but it's like, but they're absolved from that because they're so rich and famous. And so it's just like, of
Hmm.
course they don't have to have any integrity. They're rich. That's what rich people do. And so it's like almost it's almost as if I don't know how to like say this exactly, but people are admiring people who are just not good people for the fact that they are not good people because they have a lot of money. So it's like that person can get away with like look at how cool they are that they can get away with scamming like Andrew Tate. He can get away with scamming a bunch of people, but it's like yeah, he can do that because he's a billionaire or he's a millionaire. He has a Bugatti, so like he can do that, and he's the top G. He's allowed to do all these things, and I'm like, oh, so we're just saying it like it is, but just adding on
That's
top of that the
because
like
those people aspire to gain the rewards of capitalism that those people have.
mm-hmm,
Like, so one of the foulest insults to me in
mm-hmm,
the fucking world, especially when it comes from black people,
mm-hmm,
particularly black celebrities, like to everyday people like you and me,
mm-hmm,
when we critique something they've done, is shut up, you're just mad because you're broke.
mm,
99% of Americans are broke.
right.
So for me to ever see a rich celebrity, it happened I again when the problematic tweets that Saucy Santana made about Blue Ivy
Mm-hmm,
and Northwest came out, right?
mm-hmm,
He said, have we not all been like young and bitter and broke and didn't know? You were an adult when you made those tweets. You knew better. You might have been broke.
right.
You might have been miserable.
Mm-hmm,
Uh, if being if being uh, if lacking material resources makes you a bad person, and then after you gain those material resources, you're still a
mm-hmm,
bad person, you're just a bad person.
right.
You're just a bad person. But again, like we discussed earlier, people are getting their moral and ethical guidelines and values from celebrities.
Mm-hmm,
Most celebrities are ardent capitalists. Jay
mm-hmm.
Z said that the word capitalist was like invented by black people to drag other successful black people. That is the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, when he said that, I was like, Lord have mercy. I made a video about that too, and I said like people got upset at me for saying this, but I was like, let's not forget Jay-Z's origins. And had he not been or become this great rapper, he'd be contributing to the demise of his own neighborhood.
That is correct. That is absolutely correct.
I mean,
Um,
they were like, well, you don't understand Jay-Z. Like, he's giving back
he's not giving back. The thing you understand is that these millionaires and billionaires, they don't care about you. They
at
don't care
all.
about the community. They show it all the time. Robert Johnson, the billionaire who paid off a class of like Morehouse's and Spelman student loan debt, right?
Mm-hmm.
He could be lobbying the government. He could be creating a foundation, creating organizations that tackle the systemic issue of like student loan debt.
Mm-hmm.
He's not doing that. He made one grand gesture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so these billionaires, these millionaires, they don't care about you. You
Mm-hmm.
gain no material benefit from supporting them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if you are taken in by these liars and these hucksters like Kanye, like Trump, Kevin Samuels, uh, Nicki Minaj, like all these different folks who will
Mm-hmm.
willingly spread misinformation, or these rappers who, again, they gain this wealth typically overnight and then do none of the decolonial work that they need to be better people for their community.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then you just going at the end of the day, you're gonna end up still being a broke Twitter figure who has alienated so many people that you have to spend $200 to $300 to get a passport and go to another nation. in order to help that country's sex trafficking operation. You will become a passport, bro. That is your ultimate fate as a
Mm-hmm.
patriarchal black man if you keep following these other patriarchal black men.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
I mhm.
because what really got me, I don't remember when I think I started seeing it maybe like mid-November, this whole passport bros or whatever. And I'm looking at them and I'm like, you're my dad's age. Why are you acting like this?
Because these black men that got to experience sort of like integrated schools when it
Mm-hmm.
first happened, when they got to act on the idea of interracial marriage and things like that, they have alienated black women through their actions. And again, they're a fraction of a fraction. They're an
Mm-hmm.
overwhelming minority. They're just
Mm-hmm.
really loud on the internet.
Yeah.
Um, but but the reason that they're your dad's age is because they are in their 50s and going into their late 50s,
Mm-hmm.
uh, just as Kevin Samuels. They have
Mm-hmm.
alienated the mothers of their children. They have
Mm-hmm.
alienated their children. They have alienated everyone around them because of these toxic and problematic ideas that they hold as inherent, sort of like societal truths. And
Mm-hmm.
then you end up dying alone in your apartment of a heart
Mm-hmm.
attack after, I guess, sort of like engaging in coitus with some nurse. Like that is how Kevin Samuels died.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so if you're not a celebrity on the internet, like I know I said it's especially like grating to me when a celebrity calls somebody broke because that person critiqued them.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not a celebrity and you call somebody broke, you're an idiot. You're an
Yeah.
idiot because you broke too.
Right. We're on the same boat. We're on the same
Everybody
boat.
broke. Yeah.
Like,
There are two things that I want to sort of like share
mm-hmm.
before I hop off.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So, as I encourage everybody to read, right, and
Mm-hmm.
different authors that they can read, whether it is Bell Hooks or Toni Morrison, Alice Walker, Dianne Stewart, a couple of things I want to share with y'all. So, the way that I began to unlearn patriarchy as a friend, I said something. It was related to rape culture. It was about, if women don't want this type of attention, why do they wear these types of things?
Mm.
And my friend said, Korey, you sound like an asshole. And because this person was my friend,
Mm-hmm.
and I was never super deep into these patriarchal ideas, um, when she said that, I had to self-reflect.
Mm-hmm.
And I ran into this quote. I'm 30 now, so I probably ran into this quote 4 or 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That would be when I was 25. But before this quote, when I offended my friend, I was 20 or 21.
Mm-hmm.
I've been on my decolonial journey for a decade now. In 2004, Bell Hooks published a book called The Will to Change: Men, Masculinity, and Love.
Mm-hmm.
And so a friend of mine, we were chatting, and she told me this quote. This quote changed my life. So I want to share with everybody else. I share this quote far and wide. You cannot live by the quote alone. Go read the book. But here's the quote: the first act of violence that patriarchy demands of males is not violence toward women. Instead, patriarchy demands of all males that they engage of acts of psychic self-mutilation, that they kill off the emotional parts of themselves. If an individual is not successful in emotionally crippling himself, he can count on patriarchal men to enact rituals of power that will assault his self esteem.
Mm. It's very
This
powerful.
quote came out 18 years ago. And the number one way that I can summarize Bell Hooks' analysis on the topic is that anytime a man on the internet is saying that men need to be less patriarchal,
Mm-hmm.
treat women with respect, do all these different things, become emotionally intelligent, go to therapy, eat the cat, other patriarchal men will call them a simp. And that is the ritual of power that they engage to try to, lower non-patriarchal men's self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I am inoculated from red pilling because I read. The
Mm-hmm.
only way to inoculate yourself from becoming an agent of white supremacy is to find figures who have actively fought against it and to read what they have said, compare it to your own experience. And so I would like to uplift. Go read Bell Hooks's The Will to Change. Go read Bell Hooks's All About Love. Go read, the works of James Baldwin. Go read Kimberly Crenshaw's article, Mapping the Margins. That's where she coined the phrase intersectionality. I'm currently reading Dianne M. Stewart's. She's a black professor at Emory University in Atlanta. The book is called, and I know my camera's not catching it. The book is called
Mm-hmm.
Black Women, Black Love: America's War on African American Marriage. These are great books to read to start helping you understand how we got here.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to uplift that to everybody.
Thank you for that, Korey. I think that hopefully my viewers and myself will be taking a good look at these as well. And I think that the most important thing that we've said is that, knowledge is power and that people who don't read are weak, because I think that I was thinking okay, what are the solutions? What are the solutions? And at the end of the day, the solution is that you educate yourself, because there's nothing that I feel like I've had so many conversations with these types of people who are very patriarchal black men. I've been having these types of conversations since I started posting consistently on TikTok, and I've not had a productive conversation with not one of them. Literally, I don't think I've had one productive conversation. And so they are going to have to do the work themselves. Or, like you said, they'll end up buying a passport, going to Indonesia or Brazil or Colombia, wherever the most vulnerable of children, because that's who they're going after. It's not women,
Mm-hmm.
it's children, where they can find the most vulnerable girls possible. And, like you said, just, I guess, harm them. Um, because there's nothing we can really say that's going to convince them or move them, because they already view the world from this perspective at a certain point, because they're in such an overwhelming minority. I almost am alrighty, I guess it is what it is. If you want to live this way, this is how you're gonna live, and we'll just make do with the 76% of black men that have some sense. And so it's sorry, I look at things from an abundance mindset. So the rest of you can do what you want to do, and we'll stay over here and have productive conversation. And you can come join after you read and after you gain some common sense and whatnot.
That's the message. That's the
Yeah.
message.
I mean, it's
You, an individual, may is, typically an individual is not responsible for their trauma,
mm-hmm,
but the individual is the only person who is solely responsible for their healing.
mm-hmm,
So if you are a black man and you feel like you were traumatized by your upbringing, you've been traumatized by these relationships. If all you want to do is cause harm to people of the same demographic, right? Not even the
mm-hmm,
person that wronged you.
mm-hmm,
You're just going to be committing harm basically until the day you die.
mm-hmm,
And so I also would like to uplift to anybody who will listen.
mm-hmm,
Psychologytoday.com. Psychologytoday.com has a tool where you can search by your zip code, um, clinicians, local
mm-hmm,
clinicians in your area that can help you. I've been in therapy now probably for about going on 3 years.
mm-hmm,
Again, my decolonial journey started before I got into therapy,
mm-hmm,
but therapy has definitely widened my compassion and empathy
mm-hmm,
for other people. And so if you want to learn to live in love, um, you got to read. You have to
Mhm.
want the best for everybody, right? Because
Mhm.
as Dr. King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Yep.
Um, and you definitely have got to look into the resources, therapy, other forms of self care,
Mhm.
so that you don't take your frustrations out on other people. That's the only
Mhm.
way that you can sort of like progress. Because again, the alternative is being a very sad passport, bro.
Mhm. And I mean, self-care is a form of protest in and of itself. And actually, I have another conversation. Do you remember it was regarding the psychology? You remember the big Psychology Today article that made waves? I think it was like August-ish, and then there was a black therapist, a woman who she kind of had like a
Oh, and usually Bree.
yeah, yeah, yeah. What did you think
So
about them getting her fired and everything? What were your thoughts on that?
well, that's very funny. I don't actually know how that all went down. I've made that statement several times. There was a clinician that reached out to me, I think, and said
Mm-hmm.
that they believe that it was nothing to do with practice or professional standards,
Mm-hmm.
but the firm for which she worked didn't want that sort of like heat, right?
Okay, okay.
So it may not have even been people calling in that led to Unusually Bree's termination. If
Yeah.
Unusually Bree sees this and wants to come on the podcast and speak to you,
Right.
uh, that would
I
be
will.
a great opportunity for her to unpack that, and tell
Mm-hmm.
her side of the story. But the reason that I made my current TikTok account, because I had an old one and the content
Mm-hmm.
was getting like stale to me. Like
Okay.
I was not progressing as the type of creator that I want to. So I deleted the
Yeah.
account, made
Oh,
an
so that
entirely
that
new
one is
account.
completely gone?
Yeah, that one's completely
Okay.
gone.
Oh wow. Okay.
No, not very few archives of it. Like because
Mm-hmm.
I would delete the videos off my phone. Like it wasn't
Yeah.
for space. You know what I'm saying? But not
Mm-hmm.
because I was ashamed of the content.
Mm-hmm.
But so in the aftermath of everything that went down with Unusually Bree,
Mm-hmm.
what I realized, I said, these black men are hurting, and I can commiserate with them
Mm-hmm.
about some of the gendered hurt that they experience. Like as a
Mm-hmm.
black man, I will acknowledge that I have experienced gendered pain.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the pain that I experienced, I have had to work through and process because I'm not going to lash out at my mama or my sister, my auntie, my girlfriend, other black women because
Mm-hmm.
I'm hurting.
Mm-hmm.
But in the wake of that, I said the only way to reach these black men, because they won't listen to black women, is if other black men start talking to them. And so
Mm-hmm.
when I rebranded and created this new account, that became the sole focus of my personal praxis. And the reason that that became the sole purpose of my personal praxis is because in The Will to Change by Bell Hooks, she says that men who unlearn patriarchy don't write books about it and they don't talk to other men about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is my responsibility as a man, as a black man, to address my demographic and to protect and defend black women from other patriarchal men, black women, black queer folks, and black children
Mm-hmm.
from these patriarchal men.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it was actually the events that happened with Unusually Bree. That is my hero origin story or villain, like whatever you want to call it. Right? That
You're
was my
probably
that was my
you're a hero in my book, but probably a villain in many
that
Passport
was
Bros books.
that was my Bruce Wayne in the alley moment, my Peter Parker with Uncle Ben moment.
Mm-hmm.
I said
Okay.
with great knowledge, with great power comes great responsibility, and I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
use it so that these black women are not having to continually get into it with these again these sort of like unlearned patriarchal people.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just say people straight up.
Mm-hmm.
And also because I am a millennial, and a lot of these views or the people that look up to Kanye or to Andrew Tate who go down these sort of like white supremacist pipelines,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I love Gen Z. I've worked with Gen Z very closely because I work in electoral politics and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Gen Z has so much potential. Beyond having potential, Gen Z is already flexing political power that Gen X did not, and that millennials really didn't have the resources to do.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, a lot of the stuff that Gen Z is able to do is because of work that progressive millennials did start.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I want to pass the torch. Like, I want
Mm-hmm.
to leave the world a little bit better than I found it.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the reasons that I sort of like interact, with. I don't interact with you because you are younger than me, but because you are younger than me,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I can learn from you.
Mm-hmm.
I want to build that connection, which is not
Yeah.
typical in the Black community, right?
Mm-hmm.
Typically, it's like whoever is the oldest, what they say goes.
Mm-hmm.
But it was specifically that incident with Unusually Bree that led me to be on your podcast 3 times now.
Oh wow. Well, unfortunate that she had to lose her job, but I mean, I think it did spark a lot of important conversation. And I think that like she used a lot of like colloquialisms and whatnot in that specific like video. Um and but but I mean the meat of it is true was true, which was like black men go get help so you can be better for the black people that are around you and take
For
space
the
with you.
community,
Exactly,
yes.
like do what you need to do to fix yourself to be better. And I mean she said it in like, and the thing
Well,
is like watching it back.
she specifically said that the intent of that video
Mhm.
was, she said it in the video, I'm going to put it in language that you can understand. And the
Right.
response on Twitter and TikTok was, we don't like the tone. The issue was not with the content of what she said.
Mhm. Mhm.
They tone policed her.
Yeah. No, they did for sure. For sure. Completely tone policed her. And like there's another person, he's a black man around my age, who usually like I agree with, and he was like she was really inappropriate, da 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 da, all this stuff. Like, I'm like, what do you want? What do you want?
They
Like,
want to be coddled. And honestly, if you're an adult who is causing other people harm through your views or through your actions, it is not the responsibility of the marginalized
mm,
to hold space for and spoon feed and coddle their oppressors.
mm-hmm. And like I made another video which he sort of disagreed with. I'm not throwing him under the bus or anything, but like this creator was like, what did he say? It was a reactionary video, and he was like, he said like, I've been through a lot, and but I just don't want to go to therapy. And hold on, right? And he was like, but nobody like they what did he say? They always invalidate my emotions and all of this stuff. And I'm just like, okay, I can understand, like there's some people who cannot afford therapy, right? And for them,
Hmm.
like that's the nature of being in a capitalist country and whatnot, and
Hmm.
everything, being treated like commodities and everything. But even then, Google is free, and you can find people on the internet talking about all different types of trauma, how to respond, how to help yourself. You just don't want to help yourself. You like hurting people at that point where it's just like, I know I'm
Well,
hurt. I know, okay, maybe I went too far that time, but
well,
it's
no.
like,
This is the critique I'll offer what you just said.
okay.
The community they find are like-minded individuals with similar experiences. So the internet is not the place. You cannot Google yourself to liberation. You cannot Google yourself
Mm,
into learning unpatriarch. Google yourself into unlearning patriarchal systems.
mm-hmm.
In fact, the internet can be a very dangerous place for emotionally wounded people, particularly emotionally
Mm,
wounded men.
yeah.
Now, with Black women who got on the internet who were wounded, they shared, again, books and authors and the resources. They
Right.
passed around that same $20 when they were in dire straits, right? We see Black
Mm-hmm.
women using Twitter and TikTok for mutual aid to put
Mm-hmm.
out good information, to
Mm-hmm.
uplift positive figures.
Mm-hmm.
And again, when these men get on the internet with their emotional wounds and baggage, they get into these echo chambers. And
Right.
these echo chambers are very dangerous because they will radicalize you into doing extreme acts of
Mm-hmm.
violence.
Yeah. This is true. This is very true. I mean, that is a fair point because I do at times forget that, like, how I research and, kind of engage with people online is definitely going to be very different from how a man is going to, like, research and whatnot, probably looking up stuff like, how do I make women respect me? Blah blah blah.
Right,
And then
right.
Andrew Tate is gonna pop up and a bunch of crazy pickup artists and whatnot. And then if they do pick up a
And
book, it'll be
so,
like the 48 Laws of Power or something
right,
that's just for them to learn how
correct.
to like manipulate others and whatnot.
So Pierre and Sonny's, Pierre and TJ will
Hmm.
definitely be able to speak more about the pipelines
Okay.
um, than me.
Hmm.
So I'm excited for that part of the conversation.
Same.
Um,
Same.
yeah, but we haven't solved the issue, but we've discussed it at length.
I mean, I feel like I used to be very like, let's find a solution, let's find a solution. But I feel like with very nuanced and complex problems, like the solution will also be the same. It's going to also be very complex. And part of it is out of our control, and part of it
Yeah,
is like internal. The work you did was not, I mean, obviously it was triggered by a conversation, but you had to look inward and be like, okay, well, I was being an a-hole in this conversation and like I wasn't considering, you know, her perspective. And then she obviously gave you the resources, but then you took the time to actually go and learn. And I think that's like the most important part is that you didn't just end up here because you had one conversation with someone. You ended up here because you worked to get here. And then you went and then in addition, you went and got extra help from a professional who's helping you learn how to become like more empathetic and be just like the better or best version of yourself. And it's like, we can have this conversation, but this is only the starting point. Like if a patriarchal man who's on the cusp of getting his passport and going to Venezuela, um,
or abusing his partner and children.
exactly is watching this, he has to be willing to do what you did. And so like that part of it we can't control. We can only, what does it lead some in the water. You can only lead in the
So
water,
you
but you
can
can't make
lead
them
a
drink.
horse, you can lead a horse
Right.
to
It's
water,
a
but you
horse.
can't make it drink.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the thing that I'll say about that is when you sort of talked about like people in your comments and going back and forth with them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, again, I'm a little bit older than you, right? I'm a little
Yeah.
bit older than you. I started getting into organizing space and anti-colonial and anti-white supremacist spaces
Mm-hmm.
um, when George Zimmerman was acquitted of murdering, of lynching Trayvon Martin. That is where my uh, work as an organizer started. And I
Mm-hmm.
realized if I wanted to be an effective organizer, I needed to have the intellectual resources to be able to counter at any moment any misinformation or lie that white supremacy, patriarchy, or capitalism is going to try to tell or say to me publicly
Mm-hmm.
in order to get more followers.
Mm-hmm.
And so yes, I went down the path of knowledge and self-reflection. But the thing that I want to uplift to you, Sydney,
Mm-hmm.
as you are doing this work, is something that a mentor of mine said to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was 18 when an adult in my life sort of realized that I may have clinical depression. I was in school getting my musical theater degree, and
Mm-hmm.
my professor said, we had a meeting. He said, Corey, when you're on, you're really on. Like you are
Mm-hmm.
excellent. But when you're like down or off, is like you're very off. And I
Mm-hmm.
said to him, well, sometimes since I've gotten to school, I've been having what I call the blues. It's
Mm-hmm.
difficult to get out of bed.
Mm-hmm.
I have very low energy, things like that. Right now, I've had
Mm-hmm.
this experience since I was 6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I've experienced a depression and suicidal ideation since I was 6 years old. It was not until I was 18, it was 12 years later
Mm-hmm.
that an adult in my life sort of helped me identify it. Because when I called it the blues, I was like, I've been using like, a term for music that is made by traumatized black people, when really this is clinical depression. He
Mm-hmm.
did not say, Corey, you seem depressed. He said, basically said, what's going on here? And I told him, and I was like, oh, this could be depression, right? 18
Mm-hmm.
years old.
Mm-hmm.
It took me until I was 28. It took me
Mm-hmm.
a decade, really, to find uh, the help that I needed, because navigating the healthcare space can be difficult. Psychology
Mm-hmm.
Today is an excellent resource, which is why I uplifted it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the pandemic that made my clinical depression and suicidal ideation so bad,
Mm-hmm.
that I had two choices, which was to hurt myself or someone else, or to go seek help. I went,
Mm-hmm.
I sought help.
Mm-hmm.
I got a Zoloft prescription from a
Mm-hmm.
psychiatrist. Then I
Mm-hmm.
started doing some talk therapy. Um, but what my professor said specifically about engaging with people with problematic views,
Mm-hmm.
or fighting the good fight, he said, Corey, if you get so worked up every time you see an injustice that you incapacitate yourself,
Mm-hmm.
that you will not be good for yourself or the movement.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Sydney, when you say like you go back and forth on my page, I don't go back and forth. I'll put out the
Mm-hmm.
information. People do with it what they will. Now,
Mm-hmm.
there are some examples where I will continue a conversation,
Right.
but I won't go back and forth. Another
Mm-hmm.
quote that my uncle taught me comes from John Henrik Clark, who is the father of African American studies in the American university system. John
Mm-hmm.
Henrik Clark, I don't know if he was enslaved or was a sharecropper, but he didn't have really more than like a sixth grade formal education, and he became professor, I believe, at Columbia University. Again, Sonny will be able to give you better details than I am about John Henrik Clark,
Okay.
but he had an interview, and it was basically like this white woman who said something to him, because this was like, I'll send you the YouTube link and we can
Yeah, okay.
post it, and if people want to go look at it. I've been very reluctant to ever say this quote publicly, because one, it's not well known, and because
Okay.
two, I don't want it misused, but I'm going to say the quote.
All right.
I only debate my equals, all others I teach.
I like that. I think like when I go back and forth, I try to use the Socratic method because I want them to know that they don't know. So like the only time I really like to present evidence is if they ask for it and I'm like, do you actually want it? Or what is the like I try to like discern if this is going to be a good faith conversation or if they're just going to be like, oh, this isn't real. And who wrote this? All this stuff. But I like to just ask we spoke about earlier. I don't know if it was in this one or part one, where black men are like, well, black women are receiving assistance. Well, can you tell me what assistance? And then a lot of times, if I'm feeling petty, I'll be like, where'd you go? Like, what's going on? Like, where? But the
And
point is, like,
I think that's a valuable tool. Understanding somebody's intent can definitely help you engage. And
mm-hmm,
that's like another thing, because what I'll say is that for all the patriarchal black men who say that by rallying for black women, queer folk, and children, that we are pushing a feminist and queer agenda,
mm-hmm,
uh, is that there really is the only agenda is liberation and love for
right,
me. That's
right,
the only agenda.
mm-hmm,
Uh, but there are specific agents of white supremacy
mm-hmm,
do have a literal agenda of making the United States of America, um, an a Christian ethno state, a
yes,
white Christian nation.
mm-hmm,
Um, and so you definitely have to discern. You have to be able to discern
mm-hmm,
people's intentions. Absolutely.
Hmm. And I think like the other thing I do is I love to block people. Like once they start to get a little bit like once they start to get like a because there's some people that they just like stay on my page and it's like either they like follow me, like I'll check and it'll be like follow back, or they just like are obsessed with like like talking to everybody, like arguing with everybody in the comment section. I'll just be like block. You won't see me ever again unless obviously you
Yep.
make a new account or whatever, because it's just like right now you're fostering an energy of what did Coach Stormy say? Low vibrations. That's what it's giving right now. And you're harassing all of my TikTok friends, and that's just not going to happen. Bye. You know what I'm saying? Like, at least if you have, like you said with the quote, like if you have something smart to say, then okay, we can have a conversation. But you're just being dumb or talking about the people who really aggravate me. I blocked one today. He was it was about, it was under the video where I was asking like, you know, why do these young boys seem to hate women so much? Where's the resentment coming from? And he was like, you know, I understand the resentment because I myself, I don't use social media and I don't use it for validation, blah blah blah. This man, Korey, he was up and down talking to everybody on the post. I kept asking him, I'm like, why are you here? I thought you don't use social media. I thought you were too grown for this. You're commenting more than anybody else. So I did him a favor and I blocked him because I'm like, you know, you're obviously you lost your own plot. You don't know what's going on anymore because I thought you don't use social media. So I'm just going to help you out and just remove you from my page since you just won't do it yourself.
So my sort of policy on that, and one of the things that's interesting, I guess, to me is that my
Mm-hmm.
followers on my last page and my followers on this page,
Mm-hmm.
overwhelmingly women. And I know, like, because of the analytics, but when I go and like look at who
Mm-hmm.
my followers are, they're black
Mm-hmm.
women.
Right.
Um,
I have to check because I think
pretty
mine
much,
are actually I mean it's mostly women, but it's not like I think I'm at like 60-40 women.
yeah.
Somehow I'm like I don't know, I'm like it looks like but we talked about it before like that 76% of black men like they're in there, but they're just not that vocal, if that makes sense. So it's
Yeah, yeah,
like the black men who do follow me, like, you know, they have all wide array of interests, you know, movies, anime, whatever whatever. They might not be super vocal in my comment sections, but they're there and they're following and they're not leaving either.
right. Um, so for me on my first page, when I had
Mm-hmm.
sort of the 80-20 or 82% to 18% split on my followers,
Mm-hmm.
and another reason I rebranded is that so on my other page, like I had, I think 1,200 followers before I deleted it. I have a little over 700 now. And the only thing that I
Mm-hmm.
really want more followers for is like live access.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're hearing this, shameless plug, sort of like go follow the professor. That is THEE underscore, and then it's the French spelling of professor. So
Mm-hmm.
PROSSEUR.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, my first page was called The Professor,
Mm-hmm.
with one E on the. And what I
Mm-hmm.
realized when I made that page and saw the audience I was interacting with is that a year ago, I've been on TikTok since October or September of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
I did not realize how many Black women in the US just need love and validation from a Black man.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that. And so as I grew as a creator and as I felt that the weight of that responsibility, as well as seeing again the way that Unusually Bree was bullied and harassed,
Mm-hmm.
and decided to rebrand, like this page that I made, my new page,
Mm-hmm.
I did not follow any of my old followers. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to grow this page organically, just like I
Mm-hmm.
did the other one, and
Right.
see like if the same thing was happening.
Mm-hmm.
The content really has not changed. The mission of the page has changed.
Okay.
My first page was just for fun and to
Right.
have conversations and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
especially as the pandemic was raging. And again, the pandemic is not over. I'm not going to get into it. But like, it was
Because I
quarantine,
caught
it was
COVID in
locked down.
August.
Yeah. It was quarantine, it was locked down. I could not leave my house. And so
Mm-hmm.
again, the pandemic started in 2020. So people had been flocking to TikTok for a year. I got on
Yeah.
TikTok a year later.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to have some fun. These black women start following because they enjoy my content. They're telling me
Mm-hmm.
their stories.
Mm-hmm.
I'm listening. I'm defending. I'm making silly things. The unusually brief things happen. Boom, rebrand, new
Mm-hmm.
page. Because one, I know that these black men need to see an example and hear that we've got to do better by unlearning patriarchy, by stop caping for capitalism and things like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then the other thing is that as this page organically grows, um, the demographics are the same. I
Mm-hmm.
started seeing my like the content of my previous followers and following them back.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but the experiment for me was, are there going to be any differences in the composition of my follower base
Mm-hmm.
compared to my previous page? And the answer is no. Again, because even in the work that I do today, it
Mm-hmm.
is so very validating for Black women to have a Black man hearing and saying these things. And I know that that can easily be misinterpreted by somebody with foul intent to say that this guy is pandering or he's simping or whatever. The truth
Mm-hmm.
is, I just speak on the issues.
Exactly. Say it.
But
Say what it is.
but again, I did not realize how hurt the women of my generation and Gen Z women are traumatized by other Black men until I made that page a year ago.
The thing that really I think did it for me was Kevin Samuels, and seeing people that I had like dated and like talked to like repost his stuff and be like, see what he's saying, like this is how you guys need to be. And obviously I'm like, well, didn't work out for a reason clearly, um but I'm seeing that and I'm like, okay, well, I don't know who else you've talked to, but you did not experience any nastiness or craziness from me. So, like, what are you talking about? Why are you acting like every black woman you've talked to has just been so awful and mean and terrible to you when that's not the case?
Not
When
the
it's just
case.
not the case. And like, I think the other thing is just like how black men seem to enjoy the pain of black women. And the other thing that did it for me was when Megan the Stallion got shot. Um,
So Sierra and Future and Russell Wilson is a great example of that. And then
mhm,
yes, the Tory Lanez thing.
mhm,
Uh, or well, again, the art and defense of Chris Brown specifically, but that the people who defend Chris Brown, let me tell you this. Let me tell you this real quick.
mhm,
And we can have another episode and dig deeper into this later. I know last episode I said I was gonna like sort of make an announcement or,
mhm,
say something that might be of interest to you. I
mhm,
would love to come on to this project as
mhm,
like either a recurring panelist or a producer of sorts. Anything that you need to continue this thing,
mhm,
I'm invested in because part of it is this is therapeutic for me.
mm.
When I sort of like, because we were planning, right? We were planning
Yeah.
to do a day, and then I was insomniac. I didn't get to sleep. I missed the
Mhm.
initial deadline, but we found time later in the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
I knew that talking to you was going to be therapeutic for me.
Oh.
Um, but the thing that I'm going to say about Chris Brown is when Daniel Caesar said what he said about Black women, his
Mhm.
career ended.
Yeah.
When the baby showed his true colors,
Mhm.
his career is ostensibly over, right?
Mhm.
And these are self-inflicted wounds. Don't say that, Black people are like we decide who we give our dollars to.
Right.
The thing that is interesting to me about Chris Brown is that is that Black women young black women overwhelmingly still support him. And we've seen it with Lizzo, Chloe Bailey, Kelly Rowland, and then all the other women. And honestly, when I thought to myself, like, why does Chris Brown still have a career? And then I look at sort of like the demographics of the people who buy his tickets and play his music and all that stuff, because I have
Mm-hmm.
not listened to Chris Brown in God knows how long.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just started having conversations about it. I realized that like if if black women collectively wanted Chris Brown out of the paint, they could do it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, black women are the only ones keeping him together. They were the ones. You remember the whole thing, like where he was like he was charging $1,000 to like take photos with him, and they were all like
Yep.
intimate
The what they
poses
call like
and
the gender
stuff like
reveal,
that.
um the what's the thing that you have before you give birth, the party that's not a gender reveal.
Before you give birth, and it's not a.
Yeah, everybody gives the mother gifts.
Oh, hold on, a shower, right?
So the
Yeah.
baby shower pic or
Mm-hmm.
the gender reveal pic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a
Mm-hmm.
thousand dollars.
Right. And I think in a way, the way I look at Chris Brown is like sometimes like the scariest, most abusive people are also like the most charismatic in a way. And I
Oh
think
yes.
I think that like Chris Brown has that about him, that even with us knowing how abusive he is towards women, because like people are like, oh, the Rihanna, it was just one thing, and like, she's over it, and like he's over it, we should all be
He's
over it.
threw like his most recent partner down the stairs.
I'm like, it's not been just one
It has not
thing.
just been Rihanna, and it was not only what 9 years ago. He is a serial abuser.
Yes, like that's why the whole joke, I woke up sea breezy, like usually also means like I'm gonna beat my girlfriend, whatever. Like that's who he is. But somehow I think that he's just a lot more charismatic than a DaBaby, and a lot more charismatic than a Daniel Caesar. And I also think that he has the kind of like the sex factor in like an R. Kelly kind of way that they don't have either, where it's like the baby is this short, like not there's nothing wrong with like being short or anything, but like, he's short. He's not like, I mean, I think the baby is like decently attractive, but like he's not like, oh my gosh, like I'm standing in front of the baby. And then like
Sydney, it's
kind of the
okay.
same thing with
Okay for you to say, like, for me, Sydney, in my personal opinion, I think Chris Brown is far sexier than the baby.
Okay, yes. Chris Brown is far sexier than the baby in every facet of his career and abilities. Chris Brown is just, he has the sex appeal that Daniel Caesar, while his music is like soothing and whatever, he doesn't have it. The baby definitely does not have it. And that's why they say something and then like, we're like, bye. But Chris Brown, it's like, well, I know he's an abuser, but like, look at him. You know what I'm saying? Like, look at these
Yeah.
pictures that we just took.
Well, listen, uh, sex appeal plays a factor, or charisma plays a factor in the continued enabling of abusive people. If it is not a mixture of both, then it is one or the other. And so, like, Donald Trump is an abuser, he's very
Mm-hmm.
charismatic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, R. Kelly is an abuser, very charismatic, very talented, very sexy. And the thing about Chris Brown or R. Kelly or anybody, Bill Cosby, who is credibly accused of serial abuse or have documented cases of abuse. It's that scene in the Boondocks, the episode of the Boondocks where R. Kelly is on trial.
Mm-hmm.
And Huey is basically saying, like, listen, this man is a problem and we need to stop supporting him and get him out of the paint.
Mm-hmm.
And Riley is saying, um, nah, his music is dope, yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm.
Like near the end of the episode during the trial, right, where R. Kelly's white lawyer is up against Tom Dubois, the black man married to the white woman who's
Mm-hmm.
like basically representing the state who's pressing the charges.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the white lawyer is talking about all these different things, aspects of R. Kelly that have nothing to do with the trial. And then at
Mm-hmm.
the end of it, Huey makes that speech and says, like, what the hell is wrong with you people? Like, yes, he is talented, but he is an abuser. If you
Mm-hmm.
really want to get R. Kelly some help, then point him in the direction of a psychologist or a therapist or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
conversations that you and I are having today in the context of celebrity
Mm-hmm.
have been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
But one of the things that stops sort of the progress of hero worship, celebrity worship, and getting these celebrities who are just people like you or me the help that they need, um, is that, again, their supporters believe that by simply defending their problematic behavior and actions, that they are helping those individuals,
Yep.
when really you just become complicit and an enabler of their abuse.
Exactly. Exactly. I
So
mean,
anybody that's on Twitter riding for Boosie against Zaya Wade today, or
mm-hmm.
riding for Hitler,
Mm.
or riding for, people who be like, who still ride for R. Kelly and still ride for C Breezy. I'm like, you are hurting that individual by
Mm-hmm.
enabling their terrible behavior, and you're hurting the community by upholding them as a paragon of the Black community.
Mm-hmm.
Trevor Noah, there was a between the show or between the episode take, on the Daily Show, where somebody says, "Why are you beefing with Kanye?" And Trevor says, "Oh, why am I beefing with Kanye?" Like, he says, "Well, first, I'm not beefing with Kanye." He says, "I
Mm-hmm.
understand that, uh, in order that the definition historically of beef is typically when two hip hop artists have an issue with each other and they go back and forth on records with
Yeah.
one another. I'm not doing that with Kanye." He said, "In my South African background, um, it's different in America where somebody can be engaged in self-destructive behavior, and then everybody sort of like at the funeral says, like, I wish I had done more, right?"
Yeah. Yeah.
He says, "I love Kanye.
Mm-hmm.
I want Kanye to get help. I can't make Kanye get help."
Mm-hmm.
And then he tells a story. He says, my grandfather, I think he said his grandfather either had dementia or schizophrenia,
Mm-hmm.
and that the job of his family to help his grandfather was, to look out for him, was to make sure he remembered to take his medication, was
Mm-hmm.
to, there was a community response to taking
Mm-hmm.
care of his grandfather that did not include enabling the problematic or destructive behaviors. And he said, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us have a lot of love and respect for Kanye West.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of love and respect for Kanye West's music. First three albums, I was like 11 years old when The College Dropout came out.
Mm-hmm.
And I rocked with Kanye from, College Dropout, Late Registration, Graduation, um, 808s and Heartbreak, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. And even in that run of albums between like 808 and Heartbreak and My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, he
Mm-hmm.
was sort of like being emotionally abusive and neglectful of his then partner, Amber Rose, right?
Yeah.
Um, when he released Yeezus,
I knew
I
you were
think
gonna
that
reference
he
that
started
album.
making more problematic statements.
Mm-hmm.
But Yeezus is the last Kanye album that I like purchased and listened to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that because that was around the time, a little bit before, I think, he tweeted before the Bill Cosby thing. And the
Mm-hmm.
thing that broke the camel's back for me, because he said he posted this tweet before he said slavery was a choice. He
Mm-hmm.
said Bill Cosby innocent. That was the entire tweet, right? I said I cannot listen to Kanye West's music anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Can't do it. And then when he was promoting his next album after Yeezus,
Mm-hmm.
which was The Life of Pablo,
Mm-hmm.
that is when he said slavery was a choice.
Yeah. But I remember, was it in, I don't know if this was in this part or the first part, where you said to be a stan, you have to be uncritical, and how it didn't take, I mean, for some people who have left the Kanye train, they're just now leaving it. Like the Hitler thing was like the last straw, but
Yeah.
it shouldn't have taken people, like people should have hopped off the train a long time ago. Like I think if anything, the slavery was a choice one. Like that's when I was like, all right, this guy,
Is an active agent of white supremacy.
right. Like this guy, I see the game he's playing. I'm not with it anymore. And
Slavery was a
so
choice. I'm running
mhm.
for president. I'm not running for president. I'm endorsing Donald Trump. Um, After that, what you got?
Harriet Tubman, what was it? Harriet Tubman didn't actually free black people.
Ain't nothing to actually
Um
black people, but then you have a Sunday service, right? That was a redemptive
yeah, yeah. But
Kanye Sunday
that
service,
was before the Harriet Tubman comment, I think.
probably.
Yeah, it was
But
before that.
you had Sunday service and ultra light beam, which were
Mhm.
redemptive aspects for Kanye.
Mhm.
Um, Before, because that's after the life of Pablo. So
Yeah.
then as we edge closer, right? He's doing all the Yeezy stuff, still saying problematic stuff.
Mhm.
Uh, Between 2016 and 2020, I think it
Donda. Was
was.
it Donda? When did
So
Donda come out?
then you
2021, I
get
think.
Donda. You
Mhm.
get Donda. Either you get Donda in 2021. Donda
Yeah.
came out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And around the Donda release, right? He was like still making problematic statements, still acting weird.
Mhm.
Knew of sort of like his mental health issues, that he wasn't taking his medicine, that he was a terror at the house to Kim Kardashian, whom
Mhm.
he chose, right? Like he
Yeah.
had a partner that was with him when he didn't have anything. He talks about her on
Mhm.
the College Dropout. Um, and but it's also that same album, The College Dropout, even when he's talking about this partner who like stayed with him, because Through the Wire, that's the
Mhm.
song references his accident and all that stuff.
Mhm.
That on that same album he still has Gold Digger and
Mhm.
the infamous When He Get On He Leaves Your Ass for a White Girl, and then if he
Mhm.
was with Kim Kardashian, right?
Mhm.
And so when we start looking at the Donda 2 release and
Mhm.
his Adidas deal,
Yeah.
that is when he starts ramping up his his insane rhetoric. I'm sorry, I
Mhm.
do not have a better word for that.
Yeah.
It's problematic, and it's just insane rhetoric. And DL
Mhm.
Hughes, also a problematic figure, did an interview. I don't know if it was Vlad, but I saw it on TikTok. He said, "Listen, Kanye is not crazy. Kanye knows exactly what he's doing because every time he has a major project, he
Mhm.
starts to say this insane stuff."
Mhm. I agree that like I feel like two things can be true at the same time. Like I feel like you can be crazy and also very calculating at the same time, like because Kanye West is a figure who doesn't actually need to do any of these things. Like you have to be a little bit crazy to be like, okay, let me say that slavery was a choice and then drop and then get everyone's attention and then drop what was it, Sunday service. Like I feel like you have to be off to like
So,
not even consider that, like, okay, this is arguably one of the greatest artists of all time. I don't need to do anything or say anything that's like provocative to get the attention that I'm getting. Like I feel like that is the crazy in him, that he feels like he has to do those things.
so the thing about Kanye and mental health, and I'm gonna take this time because I did use insane, which is an
Mhm.
ableist slur against people with mental health issues. I have a mental health issue. Do I
Mhm.
have bipolar disorder like Kanye? No, but I'm
Mhm.
still a reasonable human being who understands how the world works. And so the
Yeah.
thing that I need people to understand about having mental health issues,
Mhm.
it does not mean necessarily that you have lost your faculties. It
Yeah.
means that you might be at risk for potentially more dangerous behaviors. It means you
Mm-hmm.
may have poor emotional regulation.
Mm-hmm.
It means that you may be especially um, sensitive to rejection or attention seeking. For me, with
Mm-hmm.
clinical depression, the way that my mental health issue manifests is, again, low energy, loss of interest in like day to day activities,
Mm-hmm.
uh, feelings of just like when I'm in a depressive episode, the only thing that I want to do is not exist, which is not the
Mm-hmm.
same as saying that I wish to harm myself and take myself off the census. Um, but here I am speaking with you
Yeah.
and knowing like sort of my diagnosis
Mm-hmm.
and also, doing the things that I need to take care of my mental health. Kanye is not doing those things. So
Right.
he can have manic episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. But that's not the driving principle or the driving factor for his behavior. The
Mm-hmm.
driving factor for Kanye West's behavior, if I was to do an armchair analysis of Kanye West, it is in the same vein of Clarence Thomas. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people don't know Clarence Thomas, but I did some research about him because I'm sort of fascinated in Black people who sell out.
Right. Okay.
Clarence Thomas was active in the civil rights movement when he was going to school um, to like learn about law and eventually work for the government um, before he became a Supreme Court justice, before he became who he was today. He lived with his grandparents in a shack in Florida. And the community worked hard to help him get to school, but he was very much indoctrinated with respectability politics.
Mm-hmm.
And so he made the transition, because I don't remember where he went to undergrad, but I think he went to a PWI to get like his law degree.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, when he made that transition, it was like at the height of the civil rights movement, and it could have even been during the beginning of integration.
Mm-hmm.
But the issue with Clarence Thomas and the way that he internalized respectability politics and his own double consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
his answer to gaining the gaining equality with white people is not that because he exists and he is a human and innately valuable, that
Mm-hmm.
white people should give him the respect and rights that all black people are owed.
Mm-hmm.
He took that internalized racism and said, I will become better. I will prove myself to be better, the exception to other black people. He
Mm-hmm.
pathologizes black people so that he can get more access to the same sort of benefits and standards of white people and white supremacy. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you hear Kanye say slavery was a choice, Harriet Tubman didn't free the slaves, I can say anything I want about the Jews and Adidas can't touch me,
Mm-hmm.
he's looking to gain the same status as a white man.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and that is what black women are talking about when they say that patriarchal black men do not want community and liberation and love for everybody. They just want to prove that they are better than white men.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the sort of mindset that you have to be in to become a Candace Owens, right? She said,
Yeah.
I don't wish to be a part of this culture. I think this culture is rubbish.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is a nuanced sort of take on and armchair psychology and sociology of these figures
Mm-hmm.
and motivates them to do the things that they do that are harmful to their communities.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I think that like kind of the innate superiority complex that they have and feeling like that they are better than the rest of us. because they made it, and that's like you said about like celebrities calling regular people broke. Like, oh, I can
because
do these things
they're
because I'm a
capitalists, right?
billionaire.
And Jay-Z specifically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Active harm to his community. If he had
Mm-hmm.
not rapping, maybe he would be a drug kingpin. Like Jay-Z is a brilliant businessman. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not taking that away from Jay-Z.
Mm-hmm.
Does he use his prowess as a businessman to help the community? Or is he solely enriching himself? These
Mm-hmm.
are the questions that you have to ask when you support an artist, right? Because if you listen
Mm-hmm.
to their music, like it's not in the olden days where you would buy a CD, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you're like getting a product. If you just casually stream R. Kelly, Kanye West, or any other problematic musician, you're still giving them residuals and royalties.
Exactly. Exactly. I think that like when Jay-Z made that statement about like the word capitalist was created to bring down the black billionaires or whatever that even means, I was like, oh, like it's just another reminder that like just because you're black doesn't mean you're pro-black. And a lot of
All
times
all
these
skin folk and kinfolk.
right, and a lot of times these billionaires, they are extremely cutthroat and had to do awful things and overlook awful things to get to where they are today. And Jay-Z is the same. Like, yeah, he might make a couple profound comments on an album of his or whatever and talk about, blackness and whatnot, but like I don't necessarily believe that that makes up for a lot of the harm that he caused as a drug dealer in New York.
A better, a comparable example to Jay-Z of somebody who had similar circumstances and changed their lives around for their personal betterment and the
Mm-hmm.
better their community is Master P.
Mm.
Master P used his wealth to go back. I don't remember if he's like from Mississippi or Louisiana, but he used his wealth and like went back and helped his community.
Mm-hmm.
We don't talk about Master P. He's a centimillionaire. I think his net worth is somewhere in the $300 million range.
Oh wow.
Um, he is a brilliant strategist. He's a brilliant marketer.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there are artists like Solange, again,
Mm-hmm.
doing things for the community. And when people critique Beyonce, I am a fan of Beyonce, particularly of the Beyonce Lemonade and Renaissance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I do think that Beyonce is evolving as an artist, but anytime I hear people critique Beyonce, and it's usually sort of like black women and often leftist black women,
Mm-hmm.
uh, they'd be like, well, Solange is so much better because of X, Y, and Z. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
Beyonce has not caused active harm on her journey. She may have
Yeah.
needed time
Mm-hmm.
to allow her cultural influences to show through her music.
Mm-hmm.
But like at this point in my life, I'm like, give Beyonce a chance. Because for
Yeah.
me, my admiration of Beyonce as an artist and an individual, it went from, well, the music she creates doesn't really speak to me,
Mm-hmm.
to, oh, this is like a radical shift for her.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just
I mean,
taking,
even like I remember when Black is King was released, and a lot of people were talking about how she was using African visuals and whatnot, and kind of in a way like accusing her of like appropriation. But like that whole album to me felt like she was propping other people up and just putting her name on it so that we could see and listen to African artists for like the first time. Like I mean, I've been hip to African music forever, but like, you know, I feel like you can attribute the rise of like people like Wizkid, Burna Boy, like that's Beyonce. That's
Beyonce is for the
Beyonce.
Beyonce is for the community. She
No,
has
she is
attached
for
herself to
sure.
a black capitalist, and she is a black capitalist. But Beyonce has helped Houston out tremendously.
Mhm.
Like, and she does platform other artists. The
Mhm.
fact that Saucy Santana would not recant his previous tweets about saying Blue Ivy's hair is nappy and yada 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 after he used the sample to Crazy in Love for
Yeah.
Booty. I was like, Santana is a bad person.
I the city girls, they're funny sometimes. I mean, Santana's not technically part of a member of the City Girls. Like the three of them, that little clique crew or whatever, they're
Yeah.
funny sometimes. But like JT's old tweets, they resurfaced a couple years ago, and she was saying things like, "Oh, I really want to like have sex with R. Kelly" and like stuff like that. So that group,
Some listen,
there's a
sometimes you
reason
just
why
have to
they flock
give
together.
sometimes you just have to give artists and individuals, you have to give people room to grow if you see that they're doing the work, right?
Mm-hmm.
JT like went to jail for scamming.
Mm-hmm.
Uh she has said problematic things, but since we you brought up JT, right? She posted that image on Instagram and it was black women up and down the comments saying she looks like a man and all this other stuff. JT
Mm-hmm.
is a beautiful black woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um and again is not currently causing active harm.
Yeah.
And even Carisha is not causing necessarily active harm. If we're going to sort of like critique these artists, Carisha
Mm-hmm.
said that she wanted to be the black Oprah Winfrey, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a fucked up statement, man. And people, again, people
Wait,
who,
hold on. Oh wait, I remember this tweet. She said she wanted to be the Black Oprah Winfrey.
right, because of her show, people
Yeah,
who
yeah,
crit-
yeah.
people who critique Oprah,
Mm-hmm.
and there are critiques to be had about Oprah Winfrey. The fact that she wanted to do a documentary on Russell Simmons' alleged abuse, that's not a good critique of her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Oprah Winfrey, scholarships for people to go to Morehouse and Spelman. She sent
Mm-hmm.
black people to school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oprah Winfrey was sexually assaulted by her father or an uncle. I don't remember,
Something.
but
It was a very traumatizing story. I
she
can't remember
grew
the
up in the
specifics.
Jim Crow. She grew up in the Jim Crow South,
Mm-hmm.
and she has done tremendous things for black people.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you can do tremendous things for black people and still be deserving of critique.
Mm-hmm.
W.B. Du Bois is worthy of critique.
Mm-hmm.
Booker Washington is worthy of critique.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but just like when B. Simone tried to critique R. Kelly and she missed the, not R. Kelly, Martin Luther King Jr.
MLK wasn't she was like
Yeah.
he was a what did you say that he was a bad person or something like that?
What she said was, um, because her initial critique, I think, was very good. That any time that black people, particularly black women,
Mm-hmm.
critique black men,
Mm-hmm.
um, everybody rushes in typically to defend and protect them, right?
Right,
We see
right.
it happen with Chris Brown, R.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly, Kanye, Bill Cosby, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even Chris Rock to a certain degree. Um, Typically, if you critique a black celebrity, there will always be people who immediately will say, like, you are trying to do a character assassination of that person. You're
Right.
trying to tear down a successful black man, a good
Mm-hmm.
black. So that
Mm-hmm.
part where she said that stuff,
Yeah.
valid. But where she erred, in my personal opinion, was when she
Mm-hmm.
said, you look at MLK, he's a great civil rights leader, Nobel Peace Prize winner,
Mm-hmm.
uh, leader of the civil rights movement, but he's cheating on his wife. He's not a good father and husband. He's not a good black man. It's like a if I had to critique Martin Luther King Jr., I would say that he is a complicated figure who did an overwhelming amount of good, not only in American society,
Mm-hmm.
but nationally.
Mm-hmm.
And that while we can celebrate the myriad accomplishments
Mm-hmm.
and the work that he did, we can also have the discussion about how his home life was not the best, but also how future generations should not attempt to emulate his home life.
Mm-hmm.
But for her to suggest that Black people, Black Americans, should have the right to throw MLK out
Mm-hmm.
because of his indiscretions, again, that does not leave room for growth.
I think that like with social media and like the discourse that does well on social media, it's always polarizing. And so in that way, it's almost like when we're having discussions like this, we feel encouraged to make statements like MLK was a bad man because of XYZ. I think that like people need to be more specific. Was he a bad husband? For sure. Because can't cheat on your wife constantly and be considered a good husband. Did he lack integrity in his personal life? Yeah, it would seem to be the case, especially because he's also a reverend.
Yeah.
So, that's not a good look for him at all. And, whether or not he was a good dad, I don't know. I'm not his child, so I can't say whether he was or wasn't. But like two things can be true at the same time. Like he can be a really, really bad husband, but he also did a lot of good. And like you said, like it really should just be about learning from other people's lives and experiences where it's like, okay, I also want to do a lot of good, but I don't want to be a bad partner and I don't want my family life to be in shambles. So I need to find a balance. And I think that's like in general, I think that's what needs to be preached more often is balance. Like even in our critiques of people, there needs to be balance as well. We don't need to go to the extreme of like this is a evil, awful person when they've done so much good as well. Like and just kind of accept the complexities that is being a human being pretty much.
So I sort of took that lesson away from the Bill Cosby saga,
Mm.
because what I didn't understand is why elder millennials and
Mm-hmm.
Gen Zers were so defensive of Bill Cosby, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like what did he sprinkle in the Cosby show and a different world that has these people unable to say he made these great programs and
Mm-hmm.
did a lot of good things while he was highly visible, but also in his private life was a serial rapist and sexual abuser. And
Mm-hmm.
so what I did, like honestly, to be fair, at the time that it happened, because I think this was back in like 2017 and 18.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's still on Amazon Prime, but the Cosby Show was on Amazon Prime. I was
Mm-hmm.
a kid when I first watched the Cosby Show. I
Right.
went back and watched the Cosby Show, Sydney.
Mm-hmm.
The Cosby Show is one of, if not the greatest sitcom in American history.
Mm-hmm. I think
I
once you
can say that
become
hands down.
wow. I mean, I
But
don't
I can
I
also
I
say that
really
Bill
don't
Cosby,
watch. Oh, sorry. What were you saying? Go on. You go.
I can also say that Bill Cosby is like, he has been a bad person. He has been unrepentant, and
Mhm.
whatever he gets, he gets. Um, I think you were about to say like you don't watch like or support the works of artists who are
Well, hold
problematic.
on, hold on. I wasn't gonna say that. I was gonna say that I rarely watch sitcoms. Like people always talk about like, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, da 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 da, all these shows. I'm like, to be honest with you, I didn't watch barely watched any of them. Um, but I think that like in general, it's hard to be partial for things that you have an emotional connection to. And like I don't know if this is if the conversation of parasocial relationships is appropriate in this regard, but I
It is.
almost feel like it is where it's like you see Bill Cosby as an uncle or as a father figure and all these things and then like you hear that like look at what and you see what he's been doing, but you just can't you can't actually imagine him doing those things because you've seen him as like a nice man your entire life. And so it's like I think that's what makes it so hard for people to hold men like Bill Cosby accountable while also being like, you know what? He was a great actor and he made some really, really entertaining and wonderful TV shows, but he's also when it comes to like his personal life, like you were saying, he did not conduct himself the way that he should have. And so it's just like, I think that like people see these celebrities as their family, as their friends, and it's like you need to be able to compartmentalize all relationships in your lives, and the relationships that you have with those celebrities, though they may not have one with you, like it still exists, and you still have to manage that as well. Otherwise, like it can really mess up your moral compass and the values that you have.
I got nothing else to say. You said it all.
I mean, I just had to get that off my chest because that is definitely something that I've seen where it's like Nicki Minaj is your sister or your aunt. Future is your brother, your cousin. Like it's like these people are so close to these celebrities that they're not looking at them from an objective perspective. And so that I feel like we kind of have to acknowledge, and I think it's almost embarrassing to admit that like, oh, I see this person as like a friend of mine because like they have no idea who you are. But like that's how they want it to be. That's how those celebrities, they have public relations teams that are curating their whole vibe and personality to make them marketable to you. So it is okay if you feel this closeness and a bond with them, but you have to be able to like manage it as well.
Yeah. And we can I think, the next time we link, that might be like a great topic of discussion is sort of like celebrity culture and how it
Mm-hmm.
influences um us. This has been a great time for me.
For
So I
sure.
appreciate you
Mm-hmm.
making the space and allowing me to be here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna give y'all a little behind the scenes stuff. It is 1 a.m. Central Time, so that means it's 2 a.m. for Sydney. We have been on
Yeah.
this call, this interview, for almost 4 hours, y'all. 4 hours, and the time has flown by. It hasn't been
Mm-hmm.
like a bad experience, but I am exhausted. I got nothing
Mm-hmm.
left in the tank. So I'm gonna call it a night. But I listen, if you're hearing this, and Sydney, I don't know, man, this is gonna be quite an editing job for you
Yeah,
because
no, it is. It
yeah,
is gonna be an
uh,
editing job. I don't know when this one will. I usually try to have as quick a turnaround as I can. I don't know how long this one will be, but
take your time. But there are
I'll do what
definitely
I
some
can.
clips in here that you can
Oh, for
use to
sure.
sort of promote it and tease it.
Oh yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I gotta run, but I know typically, well, not even typically, the host obviously will do the outro, but I
Mm,
want Sydney Rosant her flowers for
thank you.
creating this project, for being the star athlete and academic that she is,
Thank you.
um, and just for continuing to do the work
Hmm.
because the world needs more Sydney Rosans.
I appreciate that greatly. I do. And the world for sure needs more Corey Wilsons. Like we spoke about it earlier. I'm not gonna hold you up because I know you need to get your rest.
So do you.
I do. I'm probably not going to end up resting that much just because I have to be up early to vote. I should have voted earlier last week, but my mom texted me and she was like, "Sydney, like we're getting up at 6 a.m." And I was like, "Alrighty, I guess I just won't get a lot of sleep tonight."
That's what I'm
But
saying. Go
it's
get your shower, like drink your water, go to sleep, go defeat Herschel Walker.
whew, I don't even want to get into him. I don't even want to go there. But yeah, so like we talked about it earlier, just like it is work. Like this is not, you don't just wake up one day and you're completely and totally decolonizing against white supremacy. You actually have to not just have conversations, but you have to make the effort to learn. I was lucky enough to take classes where with world-renowned professors who wrote books and literature and kind of forced me to learn about this stuff and be able to like have conversations about it. But like that's what it's all about at the end of the day. It's like the same thing as the experience I had training, working out with like personal trainers for basketball, where it's like those two. I don't know what's
Sorry.
going on. Oh. those like I would work out maybe 2 hours or an hour like on the weekends, but my dad would always be like, that's not enough. That's the intro. You need to be doing this for a few hours every day. And then when you come back, they can introduce something that's more complicated and something that's more advanced. And that's exactly what this interview is. This is the hour and a half training session. But now you have the resources each and every day. You have to do it on your own. And then when you come back, we're going to have another conversation or another topic that we're covering. And it'll be the same process over and over and over again. But like the ones who get it, like y'all are going to be good. And the ones who don't, well, I guess you'll be in Costa Rica somewhere. That's none of my business. You might get scammed. One of them got stuck in New Mexico somehow. He didn't even make it out the country. So that's all we have for you guys today. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching both parts. And make sure, as always, that you subscribe, like, and comment because I'm gonna be giving you guys as much content as I can.
And
All right.
follow us.
Yes, 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 yes. Everything will
am
be linked in the description, so you'll know where to go. You go directly to our pages, click the follow button, and engage with us because I definitely love to talk and go back and forth and whatnot. And I know that Korey, he loves to have. I know you like to do the like you always respond to the comments with like a video. I've like noticed that on your page.
Well, if the comment is particularly interesting, I mean, I'm in the comments. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
one of the things you said earlier about sort of how you curate your social media
Mm-hmm.
pages to make those things safe spaces for your followers, for me is like nobody really attempts to harass me or my followers. But my rule is this on TikTok. If you
Mm-hmm.
leave a comment that I don't understand
Mm-hmm.
or that uh seems to be that I interpret as problematic, I'll be like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you have, you can explain, like you can, I will ask for clarification. What do you
Mm-hmm.
mean when you say this, right?
Right, right,
And
right.
then if their clarification satisfies my ethical and moral guidelines,
Mm-hmm.
then, no issue. If it doesn't, you're blocked.
Mm.
But
Fair.
yeah, like yeah, I mean, I don't like to go back and forth with people on the internet because we are all sort of like figments of how people perceive us.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Text is a terrible way. It's a terrible medium through which to convey intent, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
like 80% of communication between humans is nonverbal. And
Mm-hmm.
so TikTok is powerful in that you are getting body language, you're getting intonation and all these
Mm-hmm.
other markers of communication. And that's one of the reasons why it is so powerful as an education resource. Um, and why I like to use it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a phone call type of guy over a text message any day of the week.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, I'll give people two strikes on my page.
That's fair. I think for me, it's like if I just keep seeing the same name pop up in my notifications, I'm like, let me see what's going on. I keep seeing them under different people's just acting a fool. I'm like, you don't belong here. This is not the page for you. Because like I'm okay with disagreeing with somebody and being like, you know what? That's your perception of whatever's going on. It is what it is. But what I'm not okay with is like people who are trolling or mocking, or it's just like you're definitely a lost cause and I don't want anything to do with you, and I don't even want people who follow me to do anything with you either, or to go back and forth with you either. I don't even want them to waste their time. So goodbye.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
Mhm.
You got to curate. If you're a creator, if you're a sort of like an educational content creator,
Mhm.
you certainly have to curate. All engagement is not good engagement on these apps.
Mhm. Mhm. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But we're going to bring this conversation to its official close. It was wonderful having you on, Korey. You're incredibly insightful. And I mean, I've learned a lot during this conversation. And I know that people who are watching will also learn a lot as well.
Thank you. I listen. I feel honored to be in this space with you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm honored to have you in this space as well. But that's what it's all about. It's just about, for me, like creating the podcast was just like, I want to amplify other people's voices and I want it to not be hostile. I want it to be soothing, therapeutic, in a place where people can just come as they are, hear me talk a little bit, hear whoever I'm with talk a little bit, and then, go on and with a little bit, a few nuggets of wisdom and whatnot.
Well, y'all be on the lookout for our again continuing conversation about the Black gender wars, where we
Mm-hmm.
have Sunny Day Jones and Pierre Fleury, King Pierre from TikTok on.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Alrighty. This is the official goodbye. Peace.
Bye, Sydney.
Bye.